What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for today, Simon Villanoz, aka Coach V, and we got another season preview here where we are going to talk about a lot of teams here from 1A to 5A here, kind of in that Denver area, as well as in Highlands Ranch as well. Kind of all over, honestly, kind of all over here. A lot of different teams. This will be a very diverse episode, but regardless, for every team, we're going to talk about last year, recap it game by game in the regular season, and then in the playoffs. Following that, we're going to talk about graduating seniors, and then we're going to talk about key players to look out for this upcoming 2023 season, and each team has them. Each team has them, players to look out for, so there you go there. And then following that, we're going to go game by game on every team's schedule, predicting wins and losses. At the end, I'll give them a final predicted record that I have them going based on the schedule that I have. In addition, I'll give them a window of wins. So this is basically just a range of wins that I believe these teams will finish in, because, I can't predict everything. There are some games that could definitely go either way there. So there you go there. Also, on top of that, I am just going to mention this. I can't talk about every single player. Especially on this episode, there are a lot of great players here. And we got 11 teams on this episode, so it's a lot to talk about, right? I want to make sure I give enough time to each team here and, kind of get to it. But I'll do my best to cover as many key players as possible. So there you go there. But before we hop into the episode here, I want to give a quick breakdown. I did a season preview of all of these teams before the 2022 season. And so obviously, some of those predictions were right. Some of them were wrong here, but let me give a quick breakdown of where my predictions stood with these 11 teams on this episode. And by the way, we are going to be talking about Bennett, Clear Creek, Jefferson, Manual, Platte Canyon, Sheridan, Highlands Ranch, Mountain Vista, Rock Canyon, Thunderidge, and Valor Christian. So there you go. But let me give a quick breakdown here. There's only one team out of these 11 here that I was just completely wrong about. Wasn't in the ballpark, wasn't in the neighborhood. I was just wrong, and I admit it, right? Then there are 4 teams whose record I was right about. Like, I was exactly right. I predicted their number of wins exactly right. And then this is honestly probably the most accurate I've ever been with any group of teams here, but 6 of these teams, the wide majority, were within the window of wins that I predicted for them. So there you go. There only one team I was wrong about. The rest I was either in the neighborhood or in the ballpark about, or I got the record exactly right. So this is definitely a group that I'd like to say I know pretty well. I'm just going to throw that out there. So boom, there you go there. Let's go ahead and hop into these season previews though. Okay, now we're going to talk about the team that I was wrong about. The only team out of the 11 that I was just straight wrong, not in the ballpark, not in the neighborhood, didn't get their wins right, I was just wrong about. And that is Bennett High School. Last season had them going 3-6 with a window of wins between 2 and 4. I mean, they struggled the season before in 2021, and then this season they were playing a tougher schedule, as I believe they moved up to 2A here. But in 2022 they got significantly better. And so I got a lot of games wrong, I'm not going to lie. So I'm just going to go down the schedule here and talk about each one here. Against Weld Central, they would go ahead and beat them there. That would be a blowout, 38-7. They would defeat Sterling 68-21. Sterling was a lot more worse than I thought they would be. So it kind of went both ways there. I was wrong about both teams. Then they played Banning Lewis Academy. I was actually at this game. I said that this would be a loss for Bennett here, and it ended up being a very close 40-32 game. Banning Lewis kind of shot themselves in the foot a couple of times though in the first half, so it is what it is, but it is a very good away win that they got. Then I got the Strasburg game right. They lost that one 43-14. Got the Prospect Ridge Academy game right. They beat them 68-0. Then they played Devlin, and this one was crazy here. I got it right. I said it would be a loss, but they lost to them 66-64 here. And no, that is not a basketball score. That is a football score there. Devlin throwing the ball Bennett running the ball. And, who knew? You got a shootout there. So I guess that says more about the defense than anything, to be honest with you. So there you go. Following that, they played Platte Valley, who they beat down 50-14. And that's one that I was just wrong about. I thought they would be able to, go ahead and lose to them. Valley, they would go ahead and beat them 52-12. That was another one that I thought would be a close game. It wasn't. They beat them. Wellington, they beat them as expected, 58-14. And that would punch them a ticket to the playoffs, where unfortunately they played Eden round 1 and lost to them 59-14. So kind of a tough year here, but they still had a successful regular season and went to playoffs. I mean, for a team now in 2A, that is definitely some positives that you could work with moving forward. But unfortunately, they do lose a pretty solid senior group here. Let's just start with the running backs here. Connor Rayburn, he's their lead rusher. He had 1,389 yards, 25 touchdowns. He's graduating. They also lose James Newton here. He had 1,282 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. He's leaving. They also lose Isaac Copeland here, their third leading rusher. He had 746 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. He's graduating. On top of that, they lose their quarterback here as well, in Carson Hawkins. He threw for 652 yards, had 8 touchdowns to 2 picks, but ran the ball for 211 yards and a touchdown. He will be departing as well. So right off the bat, they lose a backfield that was extremely important to their success. I mean, this was a team that really pounded the football here and was good at it. They were very good at doing that under their new head coach here, in Coach Koenig here, which I gotta say, I mean, he is kind of turning this thing around and it's looking good moving forward. But regardless, you're losing some very productive guys. So your top 3 leading rusher, who combined for about 3,417 rushing yards and 44 touchdowns. That's 2/3 of the offensive production right there. And then Hawkins has a good amount of the rest. So there you go there. Those are also guys who were contributors on defense. James Newton here was the lead tackler with 77 tackles. Isaac Copeland had 72 tackles there. Hawkins, their quarterback, had 52 tackles. Connor Rayburn had 44 tackles. So, that's a lot of guys in the top 10 to be losing there. On top of that, it looks like they're losing 2 linemen in Landon Stevens, who was at 6'2", 265, so that's some big size, and Matthew Rudd. Altogether, they are losing 8 of their top 13 tacklers, though, on defense. That includes almost their entire front 7 and then a number of players in their secondary. So it's going to be a tough year to replace some of these guys who really turned up for Bennett and ushered in a new era of football for these Tigers. But, with that being said, let's talk about some key players, because they still got some guys here, starting with Tristan Cronk here. He was actually their lead receiver on 7 receptions. He had 270 yards and 5 touchdowns. That means only 2 receptions did not go for touchdowns. He is somebody that, I would imagine most likely get moved to running back, as he is one of their best athletes and should be a solid bell cow to work with there. So, boom. There you go there. That's somebody that you're working with. They also bring back Brody Hawes. He was just a sophomore last year, so he's going into his junior year. And he was a top 4 tackler with 60. He also led the team in interceptions with 4. I think he could be the leading tackler going into next year, so that'll be important as well. Also, by the way, Tristan Cronk, a big part of the defense. He had 55 tackles on defense, and 2 interceptions, so that'll be big for those two to be returning. And then there's also Josh Gibbs. He's one of their bigger players at 6'1", 235 pounds. He will have to step up as a blocker and defender with so many pieces of this team leaving. Now, before I move on, there is one more player I want to talk about, and that is Jamoni Law. I could be wrong. Excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, but he was one of their leading rushers here. He was their 4th leading rusher, right? But he rushed for 310 yards and 3 touchdowns, being pretty productive here. He had 81 yards against Strasburg and a touchdown there. His next best was a 61-yard performance against Devlin. So look for him to kind of be another back that will step up, as they did have, 3 backs who almost got over 1,000 yards. 2 of them did get over 1,000. One was at 746. So, they are a run-heavy team. They're going to need athletes that they're just going to plug in there, and they're going to go to work. Now, with that being said, let's talk about this schedule here. So, I have a lot of faith in their new head coach to kind of figure this thing out. I mean, with what he did with this team that I didn't project to be super good last season, he did wonders with, right? And so now he's going into his second year, right? A lot of players are in his system. You just kind of got to shift some guys over here and, get them into positions to succeed, specifically on offense there. Defense, I think you could figure it out as you go. But to start, they play Weld Central and Sterling here. Both of those teams I don't think can beat Bennett here, even with the losses. So I will count both of those as dubs. That'll be good games to go ahead and figure out what you want to do there. Following that, they go ahead and host the Banning Lewis Academy. I think this is a winnable game, but Banning Lewis pretty much returns everyone here, and I'm hoping that they're better and they don't start off as slow. I remember watching that first game, and they just had not a great first half, and Bennett really took advantage of that. If that happens again, Bennett will definitely win for sure, but regardless, I think this will be a closer game. I'm going to give it to Banning Lewis, though, all right? Following that, they play Strasburg at Strasburg this time. I think that's a loss. That's going to be a tough game to win. But then they play Prospect Ridge Academy. That should be a win. Devlin, I think that should be a win. No quarterback there makes it an easier win for sure. I don't think it's going to be another crazy shootout. So there you go there. Following that, it looks like here that they play Platte Valley. I think that's a loss. I could be wrong. That could definitely be a win here. I do trust Howdy Johnson and that offense, plus, a more experienced defense to play better here. But I'm going to call it a loss tentatively, but that could be closer. That could definitely be closer. And then they play Valley here. That should definitely be a win there. And then one team they haven't scheduled yet, but I know is in their league, is Wellington. I'm going to actually go ahead and give this to Wellington here. They were a very young team last year. And so going into this season, I think they'll be a little bit more prominent. There is definitely a good chance that Bennett wins this game. It kind of just depends where. I think the closer to the end of the season this is scheduled, the higher the chances they have at beating them, because that means more time for their offense to gel, their defense to gel, and whatnot. If they play them near the beginning of the season, I think this is one Wellington could definitely steal. So there you go there. But for now, I'm just going to call that a loss. And so all together, as of today, July 19th, that's when I last looked at their schedule here. I have them going 5-4 with a window of wins between 4 and 6 yet here. I think they should still be good. They have, like I said, last season they had a new head coach. He did wonders with the squad. Going into season 2, I think it'll definitely show, where this coaching staff is at least talent-wise, right? Because if they could get this team competitive again, well then, I think you got a great coaching staff, and they're definitely cooking something over there. That'll be good. But this year, I think they're just losing a lot. Defense, I mean, you're losing a lot of players over there that you got to replace. And then on offense, I mean, it's never easy to lose a wide majority of the production that you had last season, because there's a lack of continuity, right? So we're just going to have to see how that turns out. But regardless, I think Bennett should still be close to 500 and potentially make the playoffs here, depending if they could get some of these games going their way. If they could beat a Banning Lewis or a Platte Valley as well, that would be big. Obviously, the fastest way to going to the playoffs is winning their league, and I think they have a solid chance at it, but Platte Valley will definitely be in the mix and will be a team that they gotta know that they need to beat in order to get in, most likely, honestly. So there you go there. That is Bennett's season preview. Okay, up next, we're going to go ahead and talk about Clear Creek out of Evergreen here. Last year, I predicted them with a record of 4-5, but with a window of wins between 2 and 4 here, I was a little bit more optimistic about this team going in, but they would end up going 2-7. Still, though, within my window of wins, so they were one of those teams there. Now, let's kind of just go down the schedule and talk about what I got wrong here, and what I got right. To start off here, they would go ahead and play Ellicott. I believe, I could be wrong here, but I believe they moved them up to play them first, and they beat them 26-0 as I expected. Then they would go ahead and play the Pinnacle here. I thought they would go ahead and be able to win this game, but instead they lost 54-6, which was crazy because Jefferson, who blew them out, was a team that they beat. So I don't know. It's crazy how seasons work and, all that stuff. It's, whatever. So there you go there. That was one I was wrong about. They would play Roaring Fork. They lost to them as predicted, 44-0. Then they'd play Sheridan. Like I said, I think that was a game that was scheduled at the beginning, but it got moved back a little bit there. They beat them 24-0 as I expected. And then following that, they play Strasburg, who they lost to 63-6. Platte Canyon, they lost 48-14. Jefferson, I thought they'd be able to beat them, but Jefferson actually pulled off the upset, beating them 44-36 in that one. So that was a game I had wrong. Then they played Valor Christian. I thought they'd be able to beat them since they were a first-year 11-man program, but they got blown out 55-0. Same with Middle Park, where they lost 51-6. So definitely an interesting year here. I feel like there were a lot of lopsided games that honestly just really did not go their way here. And so now going into next season, well, let's talk about some of the players, right, that they are losing first before we do all of that. I do want to say they recorded stats for the season, so thank you, Clear Creek, for doing that. That makes covering them a lot easier. And so let's start with Bodie Baker here. He is probably their biggest loss, as he was their leading rusher with 444 yards and 4 touchdowns on only 37 attempts there. He was also their leading receiver with 577 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns on 31 receptions. And then on defense, he was a top 10 tackler with 35 and also led the team in picks with 2. And those were actually the only 2 interceptions they got all season. So there you go there. And then it looks like there's only one other senior that they're graduating, and that is Mason Lowish, I want to say. He's a 6'1", 255-pound center/defensive tackle. He was more of a contributor, I'd say, on offense than defense, though. So there you go there. And then one more player I do want to talk about, one more senior I want to talk about here is Flynn Reese. Contributed a solid 15 tackles as well. So, not a whole ton, but those are pretty much the only seniors Clear Creek is graduating or graduated this last season here. They only lost 2 of their top 13 tacklers on defense. So they return a pretty experienced defense here. And then on offense, they pretty much bring back everybody except for Bodie Baker, which does kind of matter at the end of the day. So there you go. But let's talk about key players, starting with Jacob Young. He got the start as a freshman and had a season to be expected, honestly, passing for 988 yards, 9 touchdowns to 14 picks. If he continues to develop, though, I think this team could take a step forward and win more games. He looked solid in some of the games he was in, so the promise is definitely there. But, obviously starting as a first-year varsity starter is never easy, especially when you're a freshman, too. So there you go there, but definitely a good quarterback to be bringing back for Clear Creek. They also return Logan Ginter. He will be an incoming junior here. As a sophomore, he actually led the squad with 64 tackles, 4 sacks, and was the second leading rusher and receiver. Had 294 rushing yards and 307 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns there. And so he looks like he would take a step forward into the Bodie Baker role and could be a big-time athlete for them who could have a breakout season. We will definitely just have to see. Then there's also Asher Isaacson. As a sophomore, the 6', 185-pound defensive end had a solid year with 52 tackles, which, he was the second leading tackler on the team. And then he also had 7 sacks, which he was the leader in sacks on the squad. His return can mean more good things for a defense that is already pretty much intact and looking to take a step forward here to win more games. They also bring back Anthony Zacharias, another productive defensive player who got 52 tackles just as a sophomore. And then this line is pretty solid here. You have Zane Brown at 6'1", 255. Bobby Hester at 6'1", 260. He is also a watch list guy as well, as he's very talented. Hunter Downward, 5'11", 200. Jason Pollock, 6'3", 220. And then Colin Hendrickson is 6'5", 235. They got plenty of big players who have to dominate on this level. If not on the offensive line, then they got to hammer opposing offensive lines. And I think Hester especially should have a pretty big season. So a lot of good things going for Clear Creek here as they return a quarterback, some good skill players, and then a pretty big line both on offense and defense here. Now it's all about putting it together moving forward for Clear Creek. Also, by the way, Nicholas Isaacson, he was a new head coach for them last year and did show some promise for this squad, so you got to feel good about them, especially going into his second year, I assume, here. So to start, they play Ellicott. I think that's a dub. They're the more established program. They got some big guys up there. They should definitely give them problems. And then they play the Pinnacle. I think this should really be a win here. Could be controversial, but with the players they're losing, the Pinnacle that is, I think this is a game they could definitely win. Following that, they play Roaring Fork. Roaring Fork improved last year and slammed them this time. The majority of them will be returning, including their quarterback and running back, who had a great day against them. Clear Creek will have to be pretty improved to beat them, which I think they will be here. I think this could be a closer game, but I'm still going to mark it up as a loss here. Offensively, they got to play cleaner, and then defensively, you got to dominate up front, which I think they can do. Then they play Sheridan. That's a win there. Strasburg, that'll be a loss for now, as I think they just have too much going on there for Clear Creek. So there you go. Platte Canyon, I think, is a loss as well. I have some doubts about the offense. It makes me concerned that it's just Jacob Young and Logan Ginter out there. At least that is, established outside of the offensive line. And so I'm going to need more skill players to step up for them to beat Platte Canyon. So there you go there. Jefferson, I think, is a dub there. They're losing their running back and almost the entire receiving core that they had an excellent game against. So, against Clear Creek, that is. So there you go. Also, Jacob Young did not play in that game. So with him in, I think that's definitely the difference maker. Following that, they played Denver Christian. This was a team that blew them out last year. But once again, Clear Creek was without Young. Now, Denver Christian, they'll be losing a couple guys. This will definitely be a closer game, but I'm going to go with Denver Christian because they do have the more experienced quarterback in this situation. And then following that, they play Middle Park. I think this is a winnable game here, but the defense needs to improve. Bottom line, and maybe they are improved by this point, but we'll just have to see. Altogether, I have Clear Creek going 4-5 with a window of wins between 3 and 6 here. Look, I think they should take a step forward. A lot of that does depend on how well their quarterback, Jacob Young, plays. I think he's talented. He just needs to really clean up his game. In addition, you need your defense to play better, especially your front seven. You're too big to not be good enough here, right? They should definitely be good in dominating opposing offensive lines, and they haven't quite done it yet. So hopefully that turns around this year and Clear Creek could get it going, but they definitely have a pretty bright future here between Jacob Young, Logan Ginter, and then the linemen they have, which will be very important for this team's success. Now up next, we're going to talk about Jefferson here. Last year predicted them to go 2-7, and that's exactly where they finished here. A couple games were definitely a little bit different here, though. Let's talk about it, though. Manual, they lost to them 28-8. Banning Lewis Academy was a loss as expected, 56-6. Flatirons Academy, I didn't think they were going to win that game, but they ended up forfeiting it. anyways. They would go ahead and beat Sheridan 44-8 there, so that would be huge, before losing to Platte Canyon and Middle Park in both blowouts here, which I thought they would lose to. Platte Canyon 48-0, Middle Park 60-0. Then they would beat Clear Creek 44-36 there. I thought that would be a loss, but Clear Creek did not have their quarterback, and they took advantage of that and beat them. Following that, they played Strasburg, who they lost to 63-14, and Valor Christian. I thought that was the team they could beat. Instead, they got blown out 50-14 there. So it ended up working out, though, in the end for Jefferson. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some of their players here. Some of the players they are graduating. It doesn't look like their stats are complete here, which is kind of crazy. But hey, it is what it is. It's complete enough, right? So they're losing their starting running back and their lead rusher in Usher Pine here. He ran for 370 yards and 3 touchdowns, was also the third leading receiver with 138 yards and 2 touchdowns on 10 receptions, and was a top 10 tackler while adding on 3 sacks. So an all-around athlete that they'll be losing. They also lose Damian Worthy, who only played 1 year of varsity football here, but as a senior caught for 29 receptions, 829 yards, and 9 touchdowns, leading the squad by far here as he turns up in his senior year. So there you go there. He was also a top 10 tackler with 33, so his dual threat ability, both on offense and defense, will be missed. And then they also lose Frank Trujillo here. He was actually their second leading tackler at linebacker with 88 tackles, and he also tacked on 4 sacks. He was really productive, and so his leadership will be missed as well. Altogether, they're only losing 4 of their top 13 tacklers, along with 1 offensive lineman, it looks like. But they go ahead and return everyone else, starting with Sebastian Torres Meja here. The junior linebacker had 123 tackles, 24 tackles for loss, and 8 sacks through 8 games, and was a DPOY finalist for us. After a monster season, he looks to build on this going into his senior year, and he's a great talent over there. In addition, they have Enzo Hernandez. He was a freshman last season. He had an excellent one where he had 59 tackles and 11 sacks in his first season. I believe he was a freshman of the year candidate. So look for him to have another productive year for this defense. They also bring back Demetrius Martinez as a sophomore. He had a solid year, throwing for 1,170 yards, 7 touchdowns and 7 picks, while rushing for 315 yards. Without Damian Worthy, though, things would definitely be tough. Also, throwing the fact that he is losing virtually everyone who caught a pass last year, that's the biggest thing. That's really their biggest loss on offense. That's going to be tough, right? There's only one player they return who caught a pass, and that is freshman Gallegos out there, and he only caught 1 reception. So you got to replace the entire receiving core. We'll see what happens there, but at least they have a good quarterback back there. Plus, a solid defense that put up stats last year. So there you go there. That is Jefferson. Definitely in a better spot moving forward here with their defense and a quarterback to work with. But right off the bat, they play Manual, and that's a tough one. I think Manual is going to be really good this year. A potential, well, definitely a playoff team, but a potential contender. I think that's a loss. Same with Banning Lewis Academy. That's another loss with a lot of firepower. Flatirons Academy, they are losing a lot, but they are very well coached. I feel like by this point, they will figure something out, and I think they could outshoot Jefferson if it comes down to it. So there you go there. That is a loss to them, but that could potentially go the other way. Then they play Sheridan. I think that's a dub there. They lose a lot of seniors, so there you go there. Also, Enzo Hernandez didn't even play in that game, and they still beat them 44-8, so you gotta keep that in mind. Platte Canyon, I think, will be a loss. They do lose their starting quarterback, which will be big, but Sam Patterson returns back at running back, and he kind of had a good game, I want to say, against them last year. So there you go. This defense should be better, but I like Platte Canyon a little bit more here on offense. Then they play Middle Park here. I think this is a toss-up. It could go either way. I'm going to give them the dub here Both teams return experienced defenses, and then the offense are losing key pieces. But Middle Park will be losing their quarterback and a lot of other skill players. So I'll take Jefferson by a very small margin. Then they play Clear Creek. I think that's a loss there. Losing Bodie Baker is big, so that's going to be real difficult there. Same with Strasburg. That's a loss. And then Valor Christian. I think that's another loss too there. They do lose Dorsey, who went crazy against them. Valor Christian does. But I don't know if that's enough to give the dub to Jefferson. So for now, I have them going 2-7 with the window of wins between 1 and 4. Like I said, I think they will take care of Sheridan. And then they have some close games here, potentially against Middle Park and Clear Creek. I don't think Platte Canyon will be that close of a game. I originally put them down here, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch. So there you go there. Look, offense is definitely the biggest concern. They lose the entire receiving core and most of their running backs, so they need skill players to step up here. Defensively, I think they'll be tougher as they return some good players and some continuity, but I don't think that will be enough to win them some games. They need firepower to compete with some of these other offenses, so there you go there. But we'll just have to see what is in store for Jefferson moving forward. Okay, moving on though, we got Manual here. This is an interesting team. Last year, I predicted them to go 5-4. And they went 5-4 exactly here, give or take a couple games here. So let's just start at the beginning. They beat Jefferson 28-8, which I thought they would. Lost to Denver West, a 2A school, 42-20. Lost to La Junta 48-6 in a big one. But then they would go ahead and bounce back here, beating Grand Valley here 46-20, which I thought would originally be a loss. So there you go there. Then they played Sheridan. That was a forfeit. They would lose to Flatirons Academy 36-20. And then against Estes Park here, this was one that I thought they might be able to win. Instead, they lost a little bit of a shootout. It looked like a blowout here, but they lost 66-30 here. Still put up 30 though, which is wild. Then against the Pinnacle, beat them 42-41, and then Highland, a 2A squad, they went ahead and beat 36-34. So this team is going to be very, very interesting moving forward here. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the graduating seniors, as they do have a couple. They do lose their second leading running back here in Deshaun Long. He had 164 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, but on defense, he was the lead tackler here with 60 tackles. That's going to be tough to replace. They also replaced their second leading tackler here in Dylan Gayden here. He had 42 tackles and will be missed also because he was 6'2", 210, so that's pretty solid size for them. Altogether on defense, they're losing 4 of their top 13 tacklers. Not the most there, but they are losing their top 2 leading tacklers. So that's some leadership you're going to have to replace. Plus, it looks like they're missing a good chunk of their offensive and defensive line, which will probably be an issue moving forward here. But before we dwell on that, let's go ahead and talk about some of the players they return, because they do return a talented squad here, starting with their quarterback, incoming senior here, Cartail Dickey. The 6'1", 220-pound quarterback got the start and had a solid year, throwing for 1,820 yards, 19 touchdowns to 6 picks. He showed a lot of potential here, but had some inefficient games between his completion percentage. He threw 6 picks, and he also had 5 fumbles as well. If he could polish up his game, clean it up, play more efficient football, I think this Manual team can be interesting. And he's also an interesting quarterback because he has a good arm. He can make some people miss as well here and just make plays. He's a playmaker straight up. So with Cartail Dickey, he could definitely be one of the best quarterbacks in 1A and in Colorado, period. So boom, there you go there. They also bring back one of their best athletes here in Diamante Maynard. He will also be a senior, and he led in both rushing and receiving. That's wild. He had 35 carries for 589 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns, while leading with 24 receptions for 719 receiving yards and 11 receiving touchdowns. I think he could be a 1A MVP or Offensive Playmaker of the Year candidate, depending on the season he has this year. He is a next level baller. So there you go there. Sticking with the wide receivers, they also bring back Deshaun Fox, who will also be a senior. He is a 6'6" wide receiver, and he had 25 receptions for a whopping 647 yards and 6 touchdowns there. That's 25 yards a reception. He also plays both ways, so he can be a big game changer and really help Manuel make a run here, as he is yet another next level guy in my opinion. And then last but not least, they have Miles Johnson, will be a senior this year. He's a 6'2", 215-pound tight end / defensive end. Did a lot for them this season and was their third leading receiver with 339 yards and a touchdown, while also leading the team in sacks with 8.5 sacks and 41 tackles. He can be a true X factor for this team on both sides of the ball here. But regardless, this team will have plenty of firepower moving forward here. I think the biggest question is probably their defense. Even then, they have a guy in Miles Johnson, but you're going to need other guys to really turn up here to improve and make the playoffs and even potentially make a run at the playoffs. So with that being said, let's look at their schedule here to start. They play Jefferson. I think that should be a dub where they should thrive and take care of business. That should be a confidence-boosting game. Then they go ahead and play Denver West here. This defense needs to play better against them because they've shown to really struggle against teams who kind of run the ball a lot here. Denver West was one of those. They have both Ahmad Hussein and Khalil Chase over there. They need to shut down both. Offensively, also, you need to clean up those turnovers, but I'm not as concerned about that as I am the defense, so I think that's going to be a loss. But if they can do those things, stop the run, and then offensively continue to put on the pressure, all right, well then, that could definitely be a winnable game. Same with the La Junta game here. They do return Luke Garner, their quarterback, right? They also lose Jeremiah Martinez and some other rushers. So that game might look a little bit differently. If it comes down to a passing game, like, a 2-minute drill at the end, I like Manuel a lot more here than I would La Junta. But for now, I'm going to go with La Junta here, as they did run the ball against Manuel pretty well. So, like I said, if you stop the run, then you win these games. Which sounds a lot simpler than it is, and you don't even really need all that size. There are a lot of teams that don't have the size they have but do better against the run. So I think that'll be key. If you could get a win against one of those two-way squads, that would be huge though. Following that, they play Grand Valley. That should be a win. Sheridan should be a win. Flatirons Academy, I think this year really should be a win here. I know they'll be playing them a little bit later on in the season, but they're still losing a lot of players and a lot of continuity. They'll be working with a new squad over there. I wouldn't underestimate them by any means, but that really should be a win there. Estes Park will be an excellent matchup here. We're looking to send somebody to this game, hopefully, and I'm going to give Manuel the upper hand as they do return more weapons, but this will be close, right? This will definitely be close here. I think for Manuel to make the playoffs, they need to beat Estes Park, plain and simple. So, there you go. The Pinnacle, they don't have Noah Estes. That should probably be a win there. So I would say if they take care of business against Estes Park, and then everyone else, they will make the playoffs here. I'll readjust my statement there. So the Pinnacle, I think, should be a win. They should be able to outshoot them. And then Highland, they will have a new coach and a rebuilding program. This could be a trap game at the end here, though, especially away. I don't know. We'll just have to see about that. So there you go there. All together, I have them going 7-2 with the window of wins between 6 and 9 here. The team has weapons on offense to really go toe-to-toe with a lot of other offenses here in 1A. They have a defense that is returning most of their guys, so at least there's continuity there. But I think it really comes down to this defense playing better at the end of the day. They could be, they could be a surprise team, right? They could make a surprise run in the playoffs and whatnot if everyone takes a step forward and plays their best football that I know they're capable of. And it could be a special year if they do that. But like I said, just need this defense to play a bit better here. And then offensively, I mean, hopefully they take a step forward and are a little bit more efficient. I think they can, and this should be a really fun team to watch. Okay, moving on here, we are going to talk about Platte Canyon next. Last year, I had them going 7-2, but with the window of wins between 5 and 7, I was pretty high on this team, I'm not going to lie. Instead, they went 5-4, so still within the window of wins, still within the ballpark here. I got most of their wins except for 2 correct. Valor Christian, they lost that one, which was relatively close, 39-24. Also, they didn't have their quarterback Fouts in that game, so I think they still probably win it if he's in there. And then against Middle Park, they lost 28-22 here. I don't believe Fouts was in, or sorry, yeah, he was in that game. So there you go. That was just one they let get away from them. So that's kind of tough there, but the rest of their schedule I predicted pretty much correctly here. So let's start from the top. To begin, they defeat Center 26-21. Then they lose to Flatirons Academy 34-8. Beat Sheridan 55-6. Beat the Pinnacle 28-0. Jefferson 48-0. Clear Creek 48-14. Then, like I said, lost to both Valor Christian and Middle Park in close ones. That probably costed them a playoff spot, to be honest with you. So there you go. And then they got blown out by Strasburg at the end of the season, 54-0. So a slightly disappointing season. I mean, it really came down to those games at the end that were relatively close, you know, and to make playoffs, I mean, you really got to beat those teams in league who are also trying to climb. So there you go. That's definitely tough. But let's talk about some graduating seniors here. They're not graduating too many, but they're graduating some important guys, starting with their quarterback, David Fouts here. He was their starting quarterback for not only this year, but I think the previous season as well. He threw for 829 passing yards, 13 touchdowns to 6 picks, while rushing for 173 yards and 3 touchdowns. He just provided a different look for this offense and was a game changer. With him being gone, things could potentially get one-dimensional, which will be tough to see moving forward. They are also graduating Colton Brown. He's a starting lineman, I think both on offense and defense here, but definitely on defense, where he had 44 tackles and 5 sacks. They also lose Josh Ebbs. He's another defensive lineman here who had 38 tackles as well on defense. So there you go there. Altogether on defense, they're only losing 3 of their 13 players. It's those 2 linemen and David Fouts, who played both ways. He only had 17 tackles, so there you go, Fouts that is. So they're returning a lot of continuity on defense. On offense, they are returning relatively the same squad here, just without Fouts and some bodies up front. So I guess we're just going to have to see what happens there moving forward. But let's talk about key players that should be big this year, starting with Cameron Scrooge here. Excuse me if I'm saying that wrong. I still haven't figured out how it goes, but he is an exceptional linebacker on defense, definitely the leader of this defense. Last year, he was the lead tackler with 116 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and an interception. Plus, that receiver had 23 receptions for 297 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's a great athlete who should possibly see a bigger role on offense while continuing to be that leader on defense. Will be big time for this Platte Canyon squad, just helping other players adjust and fill their roles here. So there you go there. That's a big one to be returning. Another one that they're going to be returning, who I think is really key here, is Sam Patterson. Like Cameron, he will be an incoming senior, but Patterson, he rushed for 881 yards and 6 touchdowns while having 40 tackles on defense. He should play a big role here, especially as they lean on him to really help produce on offense here. So I think it's going to be between those 2 guys that'll be really important. I also want to shout out real quick here Greg Oramis, I want to say. He will be a senior. He was the second leading rusher and receiver here. He had 278 rushing yards for 5 touchdowns and 240 receiving yards for 6 receiving touchdowns. He should be another athlete that they work with over there. So this is a team that is returning a pretty experienced defense. Plus they have some guys on offense that should continue to turn up here. Now, without David Fouts, it'll definitely look different, right? As they try to navigate this season with a new starting quarterback. But to start, they play Flatirons Academy. With Flatirons losing so much, I really feel like Platte Canyon should win this game here. So they start off with a dub. Same with Sheridan, the Pinnacle. I think those should both easily be wins there. They play Jefferson. They may not have Fouts, but Sam Patterson, who didn't even get that many carries against them, should be ready to turn up here against Jefferson. They also return a lot of other athletes who I feel like will contribute to shutting down that offense there. So I think Platte Canyon wins against Jefferson. Clear Creek, I think that's a win, but it could definitely be closer. So look out for that one. Denver Christian, I'm going to say this could go either way, but it's going to be a loss. Denver Christian does return their quarterback in Buer and Calvin Davidson, who had a day against this team. Like I said, this is a winnable game, but I'm going to give it to Denver Christian here. We'll just have to see what happens. That would be a key game down the stretch here. Then they play Middle Park. I think it could go either way, but without Fouts here, I think that'll be a close loss, unfortunately. And then last but not least, they play Strasburg at the end. I think that's a loss, unfortunately. Strasburg once more. I mean, they always are. They'll be really good. So it's not going to be an easy one for them. So altogether, based on this schedule, they might add more teams here. It's July 20th when I'm recording this. But I have them going 5-3 with a window of wins between 3 and 6 here. Look, losing Fouts is tough. I think that's definitely a tough go, but I think they should have some really solid production here with Scrooge and Patterson heading up this team, as many other players or many other teams that they'll be playing will be losing key players as well, so that'll help them out. This defense should be a lot better. I guess it just depends how much better they can get. So there you go there. I still think they should finish over 500. If they could win some of these key games, I'm looking at Denver Christian, Middle Park. They could potentially sneak into the playoffs there, but we'll just have to see how it all shakes out and what goes down. Alright, up next is Sheridan. This will be a much shorter segment here. Last season predicted them to not win a game, and unfortunately I was correct here. Went 0-9, scheduling a couple more games there. And then on top of that, with their stats, they only recorded stats through 3 games, which I just don't understand. So this is going to be short, like I said. Eric Garcia, he was their starting quarterback, threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jeez, to 9 interceptions through 3 games. And then after that, out of all the players who recorded a tackle, none were seniors. So, there's your one senior there. Key players, Chico Strange, the incoming junior inside linebacker, was very productive in those 3 games listed with 18 tackles and 3 tackles for loss. But they're going to need a lot more than that to win games here. And so going into this season, I just don't think that they're going to win a game here. I think they're going to go winless. Now, they do bring back a new head coach here, Anthony Barella here. Also, excuse me, I think it's Barella here. Excuse me if I'm saying that name wrong. But it is an uphill battle here at Sheridan. Would obviously love for them to record stats here. But, we'll just have to see what happens moving forward. Regardless, they have a lot to fix over there. And until they do, I think they're going to go winless. So, boom, there you go. That's Sheridan season preview. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and make a quick switch here. We're going to talk about all 5A teams for the rest of this episode, starting with Highlands Ranch. Last year, predicted them to go 0-10, but did give them a window of wins between 0 and 2. They finished 2-8, so still within the window of wins there, so in the ballpark. Let's talk about this season. So they played Fairview, lost to them kind of in a close one, 29-21. I did not think it'd be that close, but it was. And that kind of reflected when they played Fountain for Carson and beat them 22-21. Now, that was a crazy game where they played half the game Friday night and then left because, there was a bunch of lightning. And then they came back the next day and played them again, and that's where they beat them and caught them slipping. So there you go there. But I mean, a win's a win, obviously. So that was obviously a game that I had wrong, but I mean, there's no way I could have possibly foreseen that happening. Then they played Eagle Crest here. Lost to them 18-15, kind of in a close one, which I didn't think would happen, but, still a loss regardless. Roosevelt, that's a 3A team. They lost to them 25-22. They would actually go on to win state there. Smoky Hill, they would beat them 17-8. That was a team that I thought they might lose to, but they go ahead and take advantage of that matchup. Lost to Rock Canyon 31-7, lost to Valor 45-17, Thunderidge 35-7. Played Mountain Vista really close at the end. I don't think this game mattered too much at the end here, but still played them close. Lost to them 21-17 before losing to Castleview 23-14 here. So a couple close losses here. Mountain Vista, Roosevelt, Eagle Crest, Fairview. Obviously, if those go the other way, I think they make the playoffs. So there you go there. Can't be too mad about it. They still fought. They did what they could, but, sometimes it doesn't go your way in football. Now let's talk about some graduating seniors here, starting with their quarterbacks here. Let's talk about Ryan Chambers first. He was the starter from last year. Only threw for 305 yards, 1 touchdown to 3 picks. Matt Dean would end up coming in and relieving him at some points here, it looked like. Or actually, it looked like Dean got the start and then Chambers took more of the snaps at the end here. So that's interesting. But Dean threw for 594 yards, 3 touchdowns to 2 picks. Obviously, without their big-time tight end in Jade Arroyo, it was a lot tougher going forward. So those are 2 quarterbacks that they played and that they are losing. So that's going to be a tough go. They also lose Isaac Engel. He was an all-playmaker guy here, garnering 155 tackles, 15 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 5 picks. Was a big-time linebacker who had a lot of production. He will be tough to replace. They also lose Brady Shuford here. He was their leading rusher with 633 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns, and was also their second leading receiver with 21 receptions and 213 yards and a touchdown. On top of that, this defense is losing a solid amount here. They are losing 11 of their top 13 tacklers. That does include Engel and Shuford, who I talked about earlier, but that's also their top 5 leading tacklers in general. So a lot of defense that they're losing, plus basically their entire backfield. Also, plus, I just found this out, they had a really good lineman in Josh Love here, but it appears he has transferred to IMG Academy. So, yeah, that's definitely tough there. They're losing a lot here between really good linemen, their backfield, their defense. It's going to be a tough go moving forward. But let's talk about key players. I have 2 right here to really look out for, starting with Eric Schnitker. He is one of their few returners on defense with 48 tackles at corner. I mean, he's going to have to step up going into his senior year and help kind of lead this young group. There's also Micah Benavuti, I want to say. Benavuti. It's probably Benavuti here. I could be wrong, though. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but the 6'2", 240 defensive tackle only had 13 tackles last year, but like Eric here, he should be he is one of the top 13 returning tacklers and one of the only 2. So kind of look to those 2 to help lead this team moving forward here. Other than that, it's just pretty bare. There's going to be a lot of work moving forward here. Also, by the way, it looks like they're losing their top 2 receivers as well. So, yeah, a tough go for Highlands Ranch here after a kind of promising season, where they lost a lot of close games. But let's talk about this season here. Fairview, I think that's a loss. Fountain Fort Carson's a loss. Eagle Crest is a loss. Those 3 are playoff teams, like almost guaranteed right off the bat. So there you go. Roosevelt, I think that's a loss. Roosevelt will be returning the quarterback and running back, though that duo is tough for any team in Colorado. So that's definitely a loss there. Smoky Hill could be a win here, but I think they're a little bit bigger up front, so I'm going to give the edge to them. A little bit of a toss-up game. Rock Canyon, Valor, those will both be losses. Thunderidge should probably still be a loss, even though they lose a lot of guys. Historically, they're always a good defense. They return some key pieces there between Will Fisher, Luciano Tafoya, who we'll talk about later on in this episode. I think, especially by this point in the season, they should figure it out to at least beat Highlands Ranch. So there you go. Mountain Vista, I think that's a loss. Castleview, that's a loss. I don't know how they're going to handle Jordan Ochoa and company there. So there you go there. Altogether, I have Highlands Ranch going 0-10 with the window of wins between 0 and 2. I just don't see them winning a game this season. Maybe Smoky Hill, and maybe they steal another one, in this schedule here. But it is a tougher schedule as a lot of teams return a lot more here. And even then, there were teams that still beat their most experienced group last season. So could be a difficult season for Highlands Ranch moving forward, but will definitely at least be a learning experience for them. All right, now up next, we're going to talk about Mountain Vista High School. This is an exciting team here. Last year, predicted them to go 7-2 with a window of wins between 6 and 8 here. Now, they would add on one more game to their schedule here, which was against Fort Collins, and they would go ahead and beat them. So there you go there. But would finish 7-3 on the season. Since I predicted the correct amount of wins they would have, I am going to say that was a team that I predicted the record slightly correct here, or at least close to perfect. Not quite there, but close to it. So let's go ahead and talk about every single game this season. To start, they played Heritage like I thought. They beat them 35-7 there. Then they added that Fort Collins games, who they beat 50-21. Following that, they would play Chaparral here, who they defeated 52-21. Then they played Legacy. Originally, I thought this was going to be a win here, and it's because I thought Legacy was losing a lot of guys between Braylon Tate, Braden Keith. But, Legacy came up big here and actually won this game 41-28. Still relatively close, but definitely one they could have got there. Then they went to Florida to play University, who they took down 42-0. And then I went to this game against Thunderidge here. I thought this was a game they could potentially lose here, but I knew it would be kind of a closer game. I did say if DJ Bordeaux gets a start, things could look grim for Mountain Vista, and it looked that way going into the game. They amassed a really big lead, but like 2 or 3 scores at one point here, and then it even started raining as well, so it looked like a comeback for Thunderidge was out of the books. But slowly but surely, they kind of just climbed their way back into this one until they forced overtime. And then this was one that actually went into double overtime here. Austin would be able to score at in the first overtime. Austin Modreski and his squad would be able to score to go ahead and force double overtime in double OT. Unfortunately, they were stopped short there. I think they kicked a field goal, I want to say. Yeah, they kicked a field goal, and then Thunderidge got the ball, and then they scored. And so they lost that one in double overtime. I really feel like that was a game they should have won there, so that's tough there. Then they played Rock Canyon. This was one that I predicted as a win here. But I did think this would be a relatively close game, a really close game, and could have been even flippable, and it looked that way, but they did flip the script here, and they scored a last-second touchdown to win the game 40-36 in a thrilling one. Then they defeated Castleview 38-21, which I knew they would be able to do. They beat Highlands Ranch 21-17. Didn't think it'd be that close, but it was. Following that, they would play Valor Christian to end the regular season here, and I thought they would have a pretty solid chance at them, but unfortunately came up just a little bit short here. Valor would win this one in a shootout, 49-35 here, so just out of reach for Mountain Vista. But regardless, they punched their way into the playoffs here, and they would play in the first round against Rocky Mountain, where unfortunately they would lose in an upset 20-13. This was a very snowy game here. For context, Cody was at a George Washington versus Frederick game just up north, and it looked like it was blizzarding in that game. So that kind of spread down south, just a little bit down south here, and that was a game, unfortunately, that they lost 20-13. Another weather game that they lost, because that Thunderidge game at the end was raining a ton too. So there you go. A little bit of a disappointing season, but they definitely took the step forward that all of us here on the podcast expected them to take. And, they still return a very talented squad. But before we talk about those players, let's talk about the players they are losing here. Starting with their seniors, Cannon Piper, he was one of their offensive linemen, but also played defensive end for them. He had 37 tackles and 2.5 tackles for a loss, so his production will definitely be missed. They also lose Alex Turpin. He was a 6'5" tight end for them, who had 395 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns, being very productive as kind of the safety valve there. They also lose Kelly Roselle. He was removed from the running back rotation, but was really big on defense. He was an impact player, being the second leading tackler with 73 tackles here. And so there you go there. Not losing too much on offense, but on defense, you are losing a number of guys. You're not going to list every single guy, but Piper and Roselle were definitely big parts of this squad here. So they're losing 9 of their top 13 tacklers. That does include 5 of their top 6 leading tacklers. So this defense will look pretty different here. But let's talk about the key players, as there are a lot of them. Let's start on the offensive side of the football here, starting with Austin Madreski. In his sophomore year, he had a breakout season. He actually won 5A MVP for us here on the podcast, and threw for 3,327 yards, 34 touchdowns, 12 picks. Was also an all Playmaker player. And I did his film breakdown at the end of last season, and I honestly said he had all the tools to be the next great Colorado quarterback. He read the team very well, those with good touch, timing, accuracy. I just said he needed to fix his throwing motion. Following that, a couple months went by. We did watch him at a 7v7 tournament that was held at Mullen, and his throwing motion looked better. You could definitely tell that it was better. Could still be, improved, but it looked solid there. And so I feel really confident about it moving forward. He also earned some offers shortly after that from Kentucky and Western Kentucky, so earning his first offers there. Those are absolutely huge, and I think that's just the beginning here, as he is going into his junior year, being the key to an offense that pretty much revolves around his success here. So if he does well, then the team does well. So there you go there. He is the best quarterback in Colorado, in my opinion, barring or not barring class. So there you go. Now let's talk about some other guys that are really going to help him out here, and that is his receiving core, which I think is the best in Colorado, which helps him out a lot here. It helps that 2 of them will be incoming juniors, just like Austin here. Pretty much grew up with him, playing with him last season and the season before, in Ja'Kai Mack and Sean Conway. Let's start talking about Sean Conway here. He was the lead receiver with 951 yards and 15 receiving touchdowns on the year, getting busy there on 47 receptions. Right behind him, though, was Ja'Kai Mack. He actually had more receptions, 54 receptions, but caught for 812 yards and 5 touchdowns. Still a tough player to guard. And then you can't talk about the receiving core of Mountain Vista without talking about Japri Jennings, who will be returning here as a freshman. He was a newcomer of the year candidate, where he caught 40 receptions for 438 yards and 3 touchdowns. Look for him to take a step forward. So they returned their top 3 receivers right away. But, like I said, they do lose a guy in Alex Turpin, but they have brought in a receiver to go ahead and replace him there. And that is C.J. Reese from Thunderidge, 6'3", 200-pound receiver. Already has offers from Washington State, Wyoming, and Nevada. He transfers from Thunderidge just over to Mountain Vista here, where, Last season, he was the lead receiver for a Thunderidge squad, catching 33 receptions for 734 yards and 7 touchdowns. He brings that and more to Mountain Vista and arguably makes them a contender here as he adds a big body, into this receiving core. And so, Austin has plenty of weapons here, and it could bode for a big time season where he could break some records. So there you go. But it's not just about the receivers. They got 2 really good running backs who are both incoming juniors, just like Austin here. Let me talk about Chris Smith. He was the more established guy the year before, playing as a freshman, but he was the second leading rusher with 481 yards and 9 touchdowns. Despite splitting carries, he actually had a little bit more here with 102 carries to the leading rusher's 99. He should definitely be somebody looking for a bigger workload, especially in some tougher weather. So there you go there. But the running back that they returned who kind of had a breakout season and was big time was Jack Blaze here. He was the lead rusher with, like I said, 3 less carries, but he ran for 560 yards and 6 touchdowns. I believe he also caught 11 receptions for 148 yards and a touchdown. His film is extremely impressive. He's not the biggest guy. That's what you have Chris Smith for, but he is shifty. He has home run hitting speed there. He fits this offense perfectly, honestly. That will be playing in mostly spread, I would think. And so that definitely adds 2 guys, 2 more weapons here for Mountain Vista who could ice away the game more. And I kind of expect them to run the ball maybe a little bit more in some of these tougher weather games and just let these guys cook a little bit more. So we'll just have to see what happens with that moving forward. And then before we go to the defensive side of the ball, I do want to talk about Jack Heath. He is another incoming junior here. He's 6'6", 310 pounds at offensive line. Got snaps at guard as a sophomore, but I really think he could play a left tackle and protect Austin's blind side and be one of the best left tackles or just linemen period in the entire state. Because I will have to say, even though Mountain Vista has all these weapons here on offense, their line is probably the most lacking here. So that's a big time player to look out for, to have honestly a big breakout season if he already hasn't had one, because I think he played really well last year, but moving to tackle definitely makes him a little bit more valuable, as far as football goes, right? Everyone wants a good left tackle, so there you go there. But let's talk about the defensive side. They do lose the majority of their defense, but they return some significant leaders here, starting with Carter Daniels, the 6'100", or I think he's 200 pounds now, linebacker. He will be an incoming junior here, and him and Austin were the only underclassmen in 5A to get all Playmaker honors here, as he did make our all Playmaker team there. On the year, geez, his numbers were insane. He tallied 176 tackles there, top 5 in the entire state. I want to say even top 3 or 2 in the entire state in tackles. He also had a whopping 33.5 tackles for loss. I want to say that leads the state. So there you go there. He also had 6 sacks and 7 hurries, leading the team in tackles for loss, sacks, and hurries. With so many defensive players, graduating for Mountain Vista, bringing back Carter Daniels is key here. He will be really important for this squad, as he kind of helps, mentor, which is crazy to say as he's only going to be a junior, but mentor and teach the rest of these guys on defense as they try to fill out the rest of the guys here. Now, another player that should help Carter out with that is incoming junior Aiden Vincent. The 5'11", 210-pound defensive end showed a lot of promise last season with 28 tackles and 4 tackles for loss. Looked at his film too, and I just like his game. He gets good leverage. He's pretty quick and low-key powerful for them. I think his game is really similar to what Caden Schaus was for Thunderidge last season, but obviously, he's a lot younger, so he has time to put on more weight. So we'll just have to see about him, but I think he will be one of the more important players on this team for Mountain Vista and could give them a pretty, I don't want to say formidable defense, but definitely a solid defense. They definitely won't be last in the state. So there you go there. Look to those two guys to really shore up this defense there. So there you go there. A lot of guys here to talk about when it comes to Mountain Vista. Can't talk about everyone on the roster as I don't have the time for all of that, and neither do you. But let's go ahead and talk about the schedule here. So they play a key Week 0 game. That is August 18th at home against Ralston Valley. This is a game that I believe the entire PMC crew will be at. Myself, Cody, maybe Cody. He should be back from Europe by then. And then Gideon and Gino, our intern, should be there as well. We will be at this game played on the 18th here. And actually, it looks like it's also scheduled on the 25th. Regardless, we're going to be at this game. We're going to be at this game. And actually, yeah, no, that's definitely wrong here. They're playing it on the 18th because they play Heritage on the 25th. That should be a good game against Ralston Valley, against one of the other best quarterbacks in the state in Logan Madden, potentially the best senior quarterback in the state in Logan Madden. That Ralston Valley team under second-year coach Yanacito should definitely be formidable going into this season. That was a squad that was just short of state here, losing in double overtime to Valor Christian in the semis. So that's going to be a really fun one to start here right away. But I'm going to say that Mountain Vista wins this game here. I feel like Ralston, when comparing the two defenses, Ralston Valley definitely has the better one, but Mountain Vista's offense is really good here. Ooh, this is a tough one to pick for sure. I think this should be a fun shootout type of game, or a fun football game just in general here. An instant classic to start this 2023 season. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to go with Mountain Vista for this game here. I think adding a player like CJ Reese just adds a lot of pressure on this Ralston Valley secondary that is losing a top 5 senior safety in Jason Tommy here, by the way. And so I think that receiving group should beat Ralston Valley's secondary group, at least this time around. So we'll see what happens there, but that should be a win for Mountain Vista. A toss-up, though. We'll say that. Then they play Heritage on the 25th. That should be a win there. They have a solid defense, but with all the weapons they have, I don't see why they can't have a repeat performance of last year. Same with Fort Collins, same with Chaparral. Should be wins there. Then they play Legacy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to this one personally, but I'm hoping we could definitely send someone to this one, as it will be a good one. I feel like they probably should have won that game last year, but this will be another good one, like the Ralston game almost. I have them out shooting Legacy if they play a clean game. I think that's the biggest if here. They need to play clean against a Legacy, because this is a team that obviously can't throw the ball with Cullen Lerma, but they're going to run it with Lerma and Anderson and try to ice away the game. I don't think they really want to get in a shootout. I don't think most teams want to get into a shootout here. So we'll see about that, but I'm going to give them the win here. Definitely another one that could go the other way, though. Following that, they play Thunderidge. That should definitely be a win. They should have won last year. I don't know why they did it, but they should win this year. Following that, they play Rock Canyon. This is a trap game. I'm just going to say that. They have a good defense, so they can't make mistakes against them. You got to take what's there. Offensively, they're going to run the ball. So Aiden Vincent, Carter Daniels, you got to do your best to shut down this running game here. So we'll see what happens, but I trust the offense to come through here, as they are all a little bit more experienced. The majority of these players have been starting since their freshman year, mind you. So, when it comes to mistakes, there's no more excuses there, right? You can't say you're young anymore. You got to play mistake-free against Rock Canyon. Then they play Castleview. That should be a win. Highlands Ranch should be a win. They play Valor Christian. I don't know how much of this game will matter at the end of the season. That is assuming they beat both Legacy and Ralston Valley. I think at this point they would be a top 5 seeded team. At least I would think so. But just in case they are not, beating Valor Christian could be important here. I think there is a world where they could vie for the 1 seed, assuming Creek loses a game there, which I don't know. So if they don't lose a game, then maybe they're vying for a 2 seed here. Regardless, this could be really important here. But, at the same time, it could not be important as well. Regardless, I think both teams just want a bye. If Mountain Vista lost to either a Legacy or a Ralston Valley, this one becomes a must-win, in my opinion, to go ahead and secure a bye here. And I think they can beat them, but Valor's going to be tough, especially at the end of the season with all that time to continue to gel and work with their new pieces. This is the most dangerous form of a Valor Christian team here right at the end. And hopefully we'll get someone out to this game here potentially, but unfortunately, I think this is probably going to be a loss here. Could go the other way, so there you go. But altogether, I have Mountain Vista going 9-1 with a window of wins between 7 and 10 here. The 3 losses they would have obviously would be Valor, Legacy, and Ralston Valley. I don't really see them losing any other games outside of those. Look, this team has the best skill group in the state. Loads of talent, great quarterback, 2 really good running backs, like 4 or 5 receivers deep, 4 receivers deep at least, right? This is going to be a very difficult team to stop, though. Now, I am a little concerned about the line up front here, but that's what Jack Heath is for. Even then, that's 1 out of 5 dudes. You're going to need other guys to play bigger and better than what they are there. So, there you go there. And then something to kind of keep an eye on. The few times, which was only twice out of like 11 or 12 games for Mountain Vista, that the weather wasn't good were games that they lost, which I felt like they should have won. In Thunderidge and Rocky Mountain, you have to win games in bad weather. Because they are kind of getting the reputation, and I'm putting this out there because I know there are a lot of dudes who like to talk behind other people's backs here, but I'm gonna say it, they're getting the reputation that they cannot play in bad weather. I think they can. And so I think you go into the season with that chip on your shoulder and be like, no, we could play in any weather and we'll still be better than you. And so I would like to see Mountain Vista go ahead and do that against teams here. You got to play those bad weather games and find a way to win those. Look, we live in Colorado. I don't think there's going to be more than 2 bad weather games between regular season and playoffs. So if you could get past those, then you're in a good spot to win. And so for Mountain Vista, honestly, you got to overcome that. In addition, I think it's safe to say that you're not a young team anymore. You are now an experienced team, and so the excuses are out the window. If you lose, it's because you weren't good enough in that moment. You weren't sharp enough or you didn't prepare enough, right? And so there's going to be a lot of responsibility that now goes to the players who don't have the excuse of, oh, we're just underclassmen. At this point, you're 3-year starters. There's a lot of other teams who don't have this many 3-year starters. So that's what it comes down to. The pressure is definitely on, but this will be one of the most entertaining teams to watch. Prime time should be a lot of fun here as they got a lot of D1 talent over there. And oh man, should I say it? I'm going to say it. I think they are a dark horse contending team. I think they're a team that could win state this year. Boom. There you go there. I'm just going to put that out there. That's Mountain Vista's season preview. I think they could win state this year. Okay, up next we got Rock Canyon here. Last year predicted them to go 7-3 with the window of wins between 6 and 8. And boom, just like that, got the record exactly right. And actually, I predicted their schedule down to the team. Oh, man. I was on fire on this episode. I ain't even gonna lie. But, let's go game by game here. Talk about all the teams on the schedule. To start out, they beat Pooter 40-8. Beat Smoky Hill 26-19. That was a little bit closer than I originally thought it would be. But, hey, a win is a win. Would take care of Denver East Chaparral 37-15, 35-6. Would defeat Arapahoe 28-17. I remember some people thought that would not be a winnable game for them when I predicted that last season. So yeah, I know what I'm talking about. But then they would go ahead and beat Highlands Ranch here 31-7. Then their losses would come in league here as I predicted. Still close though. Played Mountain Vista. That was a game they probably should have won. They allowed a last second touchdown. Ooh, that's tough, right? That's definitely tough there, but they lost that one against Valor. That one wasn't as close, but it was okay. They, lost to them 28-13. I did say the only way they could beat them is if they passed to DeAndre Horn more, and they didn't. So there you go. Would be Castleview though, 28-3, and then kind of surprising here, lost to Thunderidge here. I thought by this point Thunderidge would start DJ, and in that instance, I definitely didn't think they would win it, but they didn't. And this was almost a game where they upset Thunderidge. And actually, according to my sources, this was the game that spurred on the decision to start DJ Bordeaux for the rest of the playoffs there after that scare. So there you go, Rock Canyon, getting some respect there for sure. But they would move on, play Cherokee Trail, who they would beat barely 23-20, getting by. Then they'd play Columbine here, and they just couldn't get a lot going on the ground in that first half. Would throw it a little bit here and try to climb back in, but it just really got away from them. And it was a shame because this was really a game that I felt like they could have won here because they forced a lot of turnovers, I felt, or at least a lot for Columbine. But unfortunately came up short, losing to them 24-17 in the second round of the playoffs. Altogether, though, I would still say this was a pretty successful year for Rock Canyon, one of their best years in in program history, because I believe they went to the playoffs the year before, and that was their first appearance against Smoky Hill. And I think that was a game that they barely lost in a crazy shootout. Or maybe they won it. I could have been wrong there. But going back to the playoffs was huge for a second year in a row. Still making history for this squad. So, boom, gotta love that. Now, they are losing some really key players going into this season here. Let's start with everyone they're graduating, starting with their workhorse, Aiden Duda, their running back. He rushed for 1,753 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns, earning all PMC honors. He rushed for at least 100 yards every game except for the Columbine game, which was pretty bad. He was only held down to 16 yards and a lost fumble in that game, but other than that, had a really good season there. So regardless, they're going to miss him as he was the workhorse. They also lose Dean Chisholm here. He was their second leading rusher with 586 yards and 3 touchdowns, while also catching 12 receptions for 150 yards and a touchdown. So there you go there. They also lose DeAndre Horn, despite being pretty underutilized, I would say. He was our number 1 tight end in the class of 2023 because of how Raleigh talented he was. He caught for 463 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns on 31 receptions. Not even gonna lie, he was used a lot to bail out Rock Canyon out of difficult situations. And so this is a pretty big loss for them, I'm not gonna lie. And then one more player to talk about on offense that they're losing. They're losing their quarterback in Luke Wenigol here. Didn't throw the ball a whole lot here. Threw for 877 yards, 5 touchdowns and 9 picks, but did rush for 409 yards and 6 touchdowns. That was good for third on the team in rushing. In rushing yards, he was second in the team in rushing touchdowns. So there you go. Now on defense, there is one player I want to talk about, but they are losing a lot of guys. I just want to talk about this one. Well, I could talk about 2 players here. Let's start with Lucas Gunther, the linebacker, at 54 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, and a team high 10.5 sacks here. So that's going to be a tough loss. They also lose their leading tackler and linebacker in Rylan Mill, who had 94 tackles and 6 tackles for loss. Also had 3 sacks to go as well. So those 2 guys were really the leaders for this squad. And so altogether, they're losing 8 of their top 13 tacklers, which is a pretty good amount, including their lead tackler, like I said, in Mill there. But they do return a solid amount of guys here. So with that being said, let me go ahead and talk about some key players here. Let me start with Austin Bowker. The 6'3", 200-pound incoming senior is another great athlete who is an athletic freak for Rock Canyon. He plays receiver, though, unfortunately. So unless they make him their running back, it will be interesting to see what happens on offense for them. On defense, though, he was a beast at safety with 80 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 10 pass deflections. I am going to admit this right now. I did not add him to the safety watch list because I really think he's more of a receiver on the next level, but I definitely will. So, whenever we talk to college coaches, he could be in those conversations if they need a safety. Regardless, he's really talented. He is a next level player, and he should be a key part of this Rock Canyon defense moving forward. Now, let's continue to talk about the secondary since we're already in there. Let's go ahead and talk about Will Rosenmeyer here. He is going to be a good returning corner for them, one of the best in the state. He had a season, well, I guess not a season high, but a career high 55 tackles and an interception to go with 9 pass deflections. He should be big time for a defense that is losing a lot and should help hold it down on the back end there over at corner. So there you go there. And then staying on defense, they also returned Brady Campbell. He was their second leading tackler with 81 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. He will be a huge part of this defense that they're going to, probably lean on for a lot of this season. And then let's talk about the players up front. I got 2 that are going to be really important. I'm sure there's more, but I think these are really key players, starting with Chaz Barnett. He will be an incoming senior. The 6'5", 250-pound guard / defensive tackle. On defense, had 53 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks. As one of the leading tacklers on defense, he should help this defense here as he returns. And so even though they lose a good amount of, I guess the majority of their squad, they do return some really key pieces, and I think he is one of those guys. And he'll be on the offensive line as well there as a good guard. They also, speaking of offensive line, returned Spencer Rathbun, the 6'4", 270-pound tackle, had a good year his junior year and should be a part of a solid offensive line going into their senior year, which will be blocking for a pretty inexperienced skill group. So there you go there. And then last but not least, I do want to mention this guy here, Reed Finch, the tight end. He's 6'6", 225, moves relatively smoothly here. I feel like he should be used more. I don't know if they will, but he's also a good blocker, so there's that. He's a big target. Maybe he could get involved a little bit more here, but, we'll just have to see. Other than that, I really don't know about who they're bringing back at quarterback, which I don't know if that matters that much. And then same at running back here, as Bowker was their best leading rusher that will be returning, and he only had 107 rushing yards and a touchdown. So who knows? We'll see what happens. Maybe they do put him at running back. But let's go ahead and talk about this schedule here. I trust that they're going to figure out all their stuff before the season. Rock Canyon should definitely still be tough. They play a simple enough scheme where you could plug and play offensive players. Defensively, you're going to need to get some guys up to speed here, but you have a good core to work with, so that's not going to be the worst thing. To start off, they play Pooter. This will be away. Pooter is losing a lot, specifically Jordan Neesant. I think that's a dub for them. Then they play Smoky Hill. Once again, they're losing a lot. I think Rock Canyon's still more experienced than them. This is definitely a game the defense could win them. I think that's a win against Smoky Hill. Following that, they play Denver East here. I think this could be a trap game. Could go the other way, especially if Declan McDonald has a big one here. But I trust that this defense for Rock Canyon kind of figures it out and finds a way to get it done. Then they play Chaparral here. I don't know why, but they have this game listed twice. So maybe they schedule another game after this, but who knows? We'll just have to see what happens. Regardless, I think that's definitely a win. Arapahoe. I went back and forth on this one. It's not exactly going to be the most flashy game, but I'm going to go with Rock Canyon here. I think their defense could stop whatever they have going on offense over there, but could go the other way potentially, though. Just going to say that. Then they play Highlands Ranch. This is the start of their league play here. That should be a win. Mountain Vista, I think, is going to be a loss. Valor Christian is going to be a loss. Castleview, they should beat them. And then Thunderidge, they should beat them. I think they definitely should, as they are not returning a lot. But there are chances that, by this point, maybe a big-time quarterback or, I don't know, someone random emerges for them. But I just don't know about them with all the players they are losing. I think I just feel better about Rock Canyon in that game, honestly. And they could play that whenever, but as of right now, July 20th, I feel better about Rock Canyon. So we'll just have to see what happens there. And Thunderidge, that's a team we'll talk about later, actually right after Rock Canyon here on this episode. So there you go. Altogether, I have Rock Canyon going 8-2 with a window of wins between 6 and 9. Nice. This team should be fine, honestly. They returned 2 solid linemen, a solid tight end, a great receiver. You really should be able to work with that, especially with the scheme they run. They should be able to work with that. Now, they got to figure out a running back to really lean on here that fits. Same with quarterback, I guess. Really, at quarterback, you just got to not make too many mistakes, honestly. So they got to find a good athlete at quarterback who could also be a good rushing threat. But like I said, you return 2 good linemen. You return a solid tight end, great receiver. It could be worse, right? Same on defense. They will be tough, I think. I really like this defense here with Chaz Barnett, Campbell, Rosenmeyer, Bowker on the back end there. I think they will be pretty solid there. You just kind of got to fill in the rest there. So there you go. I think my biggest concern is definitely probably more so offense than defense. I think defense is going to be a bit easier working with all the guys there. I mean, they're returning a player pretty much at every position group, at defensive line, linebacker, safety, corner, right? So you kind of just got to work around that. On offense here, I mean, you need to figure out a running back, and that happens to be the engine of your offense. So if you don't figure out a running back, then we'll see. Same with quarterback. I mean, you need to have a guy that could run the ball. You can't just put a pocket passer back there. Unless they change, philosophy. So we'll just have to see what happens. Regardless, I think this is a playoff team, and they should figure it out as they go. But there are a couple games that I look at and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they lose it. Denver East, Arapahoe, I guess. Those are the main ones. Thunderidge, maybe at the end, but that's a big maybe. I still have Rock Canyon majorly favored in that one. So there you go. That's Rock Canyon's season preview. Okay, let's talk about Thunderidge here. This was a team that I originally predicted going 10-0 with the window of wins between 8 and 10, but I did say they only go undefeated if DJ Bordeaux starts. Guess what? He didn't start all regular season, so they went 9-1 here. The only game I got wrong here was the game against Valor, who they lost to 19-7. Oof, and that was a tough one to watch. I'm not going to lie. That was a game that they had multiple opportunities, not just in the fourth quarter, but in the entire second half here, and they just couldn't get it done. They just couldn't get it done on offense, and that's really disappointing here. But they would start DJ for the playoffs, and that's where things kind of, turned around here. Now, let's go ahead and talk about this season here. Kind of a close one against Arvada West, 34-28 there. Then they beat Douglas County 56-0, Lakewood 48-12. Chatfield they beat 28-13. Chaparral was kind of a closer one, 21-9 there. Then they played Mountain Vista. That game looked really bad. I'm not going to lie. That first half on offense was not good at all. Mountain Vista was up by 2 or 3 scores. But then, Thunderidge, some luck kind of went their way. It started raining pretty significantly. And so, they just stuck to it, ran the ball. They didn't even really force that many turnovers. I think they forced 1, but they didn't score off of it, so it ended up not mattering. But regardless, they would come back, tie up that game, and then force overtime, and then double overtime, and then double overtime. That's when I believe it was Will Fisher ran it in for the touchdown there. So winning a close one against Mountain Vista, 34-31. I'm going to be honest, that's probably not a game they should have won, but they did and found a way to get it done there. Then they played Castleview, beat them 35-6, Highlands Ranch 35-7. Valor Christian, they lost to them 19-7. I already said, that was a game they should have won. Just stagnant on offense. They only scored 7 points despite having so many opportunities. A lot of turnovers forced by that defense, which was just tough to see. Then they played Rock Canyon. Won a close one, 13-10, and it's good they won that one, but unfortunately just missed out on a bye there. That's when they made the switch to freshman phenom DJ Bordeaux. Started him against Doherty there, kind of in a short week, and he went ahead and won that game. They won that game 38-10 and got going. Then they played Arapahoe. This was away here. This was supposed to be Arapahoe's game as they were the higher seed in this one, but they upset them 23-17, and so bought them another game in the playoffs against Cherry Creek this time, where unfortunately Cherry Creek just proved to be a little bit better, a lot better here, and they beat them 42-7, and that is where their season ended. But Cherry Creek would eventually go win state, so you still got to feel pretty solid about that, considering they had a freshman quarterback under center there. So there you go. But they are losing a lot here. Let's start with their quarterbacks. They started Cooper Kier for the majority of the season, most of the regular season. And, he was okay. He threw for 1,398 yards, 14 touchdowns to 9 interceptions while running for 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was fine, right? He was okay, but he definitely had his limits there. There was a reason why DJ, ended up starting in the playoffs. And in my opinion, he was always the better quarterback. But, in the limited time DJ had, he threw for 829 yards, 7 touchdowns to 4 picks. Also rushed for 128 yards, only really in 4 games played, really 3 games played, as those 3 were in the playoffs, and then the 1 game he played in the regular season, he kind of got in there at the end against Douglas County. So there you go. Regardless, they lose both. Cooper, he's graduating. DJ, he moved to Georgia, so he'll be playing for Alpharetta down there, and hoping he has all the best of luck there. And DJ, by the way, is a Power 5 quarterback with offers from Penn State, CU, Virginia Tech, a bunch of programs over there. So that's definitely a huge blow to this program. On top of that, you throw in CJ Reese, who recently transferred to Mountain Vista. He was their lead receiver, who had 734 yards, 7 touchdowns on 33 receptions, kind of bailing out Cooper Kier a lot of the time, I'm not going to lie. And then when DJ got in there, him and CJ were definitely a special duo there. But he'll be transferring to Mountain Vista, where he will play the rest of his career, the 1 year left in his career. So that's going to be another tough loss. In addition, they're graduating Richard Okuno. He was a key slot receiver who led in receptions with 45, and he had 595 yards and 9 touchdowns. That's a tough one to be losing there. As well as Cole Hanchett, the 6-foot, 200-pound running back, was really leaned on heavily in the regular season, running for 908 yards and 7 touchdowns. They also lose 3 offensive linemen, it looks like here, starting offensive linemen, and Charlie Bell, Jackson Bayans, and Nathan Geiger here, who I want to say is playing D1 football. I want to say for Arizona State. I could be wrong, though. But regardless, those are 3 offensive linemen that they are losing that are really important there. So there you go. Now let's talk about the defense, because they're losing a lot on defense too, starting with Aiden Olshan here. He was a senior linebacker for them, and he was their lead tackler with 156 tackles and 32.5 tackles for loss, plus 3.5 sacks and 2 interceptions. That's production that's going to be really difficult to reproduce with a new group of players coming in for next season as he's gone. They also lose Caleb Keith, their outside linebacker safety hybrid. He had 87 tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. He's another tough player to watch because he was also a really good cover guy. So there you go. They also lose Jake Young here. He was a key defensive back in this defense who really emerged. He had 71 tackles, 14 pass deflections, and a team high 6 interceptions, playing corner, safety, all that stuff. They also lose Caden Schaus. He was a top 5 senior edge rusher for us, but he's committed to Wyoming, playing fullback, which I think really fits him well, by the way. But he had 74 tackles, 26.5 tackles for loss, and a team high 11 sacks, along with 25 hurries. That is not going to be easy to replace as well there. And so, and by the way, they also lost their head coach, who moved to Arizona, and Coach Neeson there. So he will be gone. On Max Preps, it says he's still the coach, but I know he's not. So that is definitely interesting. Altogether, the damages to Thunderidge are pretty crazy. It's a lot here. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely a lot here. They're losing 10 of their top 13 tacklers, including their interception leaders, their tackle leaders, their sack leaders. On offense, you're losing 3 linemen, you're losing your starting running back, you're losing your receiving core virtually, and you're losing both the quarterbacks you played last year. So, tough, but because it's Thunderidge, they're always going to have talent here. And so there's a couple guys here who I think will really turn up for them. And these are, I just have 3. I'm sure more will come up and be big time for them. But let's start with Will Fisher. He was their leading tackler with 101 tackles, 6 tackles for loss. It's going to help bringing him back as everyone else is going to be kind of inexperienced around him. So he will be a senior going into this next season and will probably be one of the captains for this squad. So he'll be important. They also bring back Max Hughes at linebacker. He had 76 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks like Fisher. He'll be a key returner on this squad. So my bad, I had 4 players, not 3. So there you go there. And then let's go to the offensive side of the ball where they have Zach Smith, the big 6'7", 260-pound tight end. Caught 11 receptions for 108 yards and a touchdown, but he has shown a lot of promise here. And there's a reason he's been on our watch list for 2 years going now. And he has just committed to CSU, Colorado State. And so going into his senior year should look hopefully for maybe a bigger role on the team, but we'll see what happens as you still need a quarterback to throw him the ball for him to be successful. But regardless, he's a big-time tight end. Probably one of the best in the state here going into the season, if not the best in the state. So there you go there. And then this is a player that I think they'll really rely on, but Luciano Tafoya. The incoming senior did not have as many snaps as a junior here, but he's been putting in a lot of work in the offseason. I thought he maybe would have been the starter as a junior, but he wasn't. Now it's a new year, going into his senior year. I think he'll be the bell cow there, and he looks pretty good for them in some of the training that I've seen him go through. And so I have a lot of faith in him. So I kind of just assume Thunderidge moving forward here, they're going to run the ball and they're going to try to play good defense here. And we're just going to have to see what happens. But it's going to be a growing year for Thunderidge for sure. But let's go ahead. Let's predict the schedule here. To start, they play Arvada West. They're also losing a ton of talent. I don't know what this Thunderidge team will look like here. I think it's definitely a winnable game, but I'm going to give it to Arvada West, who returns plenty of young talent that really makes me worried about this matchup here. So there you go there. Then they play Douglas County. I think that's a win if they keep it simple and just play good defense, run the football, keep the ball out of Lish and Stonebreaker's hands. But those two will be very difficult to account for, so just keep an eye on that. Then they play Lakewood. I think they should definitely be able to beat them there. Chatfield, I think that's a loss. This Chatfield team is definitely going in the opposite direction of Thunderidge, as they were young last year. They are more experienced going into this year. I think that's a loss. They should beat Chaparral, though. But like I said, if they just keep it simple, like they do against Douglas County, and limit the turnovers on offense, then I think that's definitely one they could win. Then they play Mountain Vista. I think that's a loss. Castleview, I think that's a win. But I think at this point, Thunderidge should have most of their team figured out. And so it may not be the most complex system, but it will be one that's good enough to get them a win here for sure. Same against Highlands Ranch. They should beat them. But then they play Valor Christian and Rock Canyon. I think those are both losses. So right now, I have Thunderidge going 4-6 with the window of wins between 3 and 5. It's going to be a tough season for Thunderidge. They don't have a solid identity right now. At least I don't think so. We got to see what happens moving forward here. It's more a show, not tell at this point. As they lose a majority of playmakers on offense and defense, the season will be telling and what the future will look like for Thunderidge moving forward. But this will definitely be a rebuilding / learning season for Thunderidge. And they should probably get close to 500 even then. So we'll just have to see what happens. Okay, moving on to our final team here. We got Valor Christian here. Last year, predicted them to go 7-3 with a window of wins between 7 and 10. They finished one game better at 8-2 here. So let's go down the line. I predicted pretty much all their games correctly except for one game in the regular season. So I was close. Now they lost to Regis Jesuit as expected in overtime, though 23-17 to start the season there. That was tough. Pine Creek, that was a game where I thought Pine Creek could beat them. That was a pretty close game, like a one-score-ish game going into the fourth quarter. Then it just really got away from Pine Creek. So, yeah, that's definitely tough there. But that was the one game I got wrong. The rest I got right here. Fairview, they beat them 38-15 here. They would go on and play a out-of-state team here in Liberty. So my bad, the Pine Creek game wasn't the only one I got wrong. I got the Liberty game wrong because I thought they beat them. Instead, they got blown out 50-7 at home, which is crazy. I don't know. It's just wild there. But they moved on. Played Ralston Valley. That was a good bounce back win, 27-23 in a close one. Cows View beat them 45-17. Same with Highlands Ranch. Exact same score here, 45-17, which is interesting. Rock Canyon, they beat them 28-13. I had them losing to Thunderidge, but I also assumed DJ Bordeaux would start at this point. They didn't, so Thunderidge paid the price and lost a close one, 19-7. Then Mountain Vista, that was kind of close, but I always thought they'd be able to win that one, which they did, 49-35. So there you go, just a couple games off there. But regardless, they made the playoffs here. They got a bye, and then they would play Legend in their first playoff game, beat them 42-14. Move on, play Regis Jesuit. This was a really cold game. I fortunately was not there, as this was one of two games going on in the entire state on that Friday night. The other one being a Loveland versus Montrose game up north. But, Valor, they survived the cold, and most importantly, they survived this game in the cold, beating Regis Jesuit this time 45-28 in a game that was pretty close until the end there, where they just kind of lost juice. Regis did. Then they played Ralston Valley. I'm going to encourage you to go ahead, go to YouTube, check out or type in Valor Christian versus Ralston Valley 2023 playoff game. There's an excellent YouTube video out there that recaps as well, put out by Valor Athletics. I'm going to use some of those clips for our TikTok coming up, so there's that as well. But they won a close one against Ralston Valley, 42-41 in double overtime there. They had to really grind this one out, as Ralston Valley gave their all in this game, but Valor once more just barely got through and would punch their way to another state championship game where they played Cherry Creek, and they played them the closest they've had in all their previous matchups here, I'm pretty sure, and only lost to them 24-17, coming really close of beating them there, but just coming up a little bit short there. So there you go. That is Valor Christian season under first-year head coach Brett McGatlin. I would say is a success, honestly. I think that first year was very much a success for Valor Christian, and there's a lot they could use to build on that and go into next year. But first, let's talk about the players they are losing. Starting with players on this offensive line, there are three specifically that I want to talk about here. Tanner Morley, who's going to CSU, who was a top 5 senior guy for us at guard, I want to say. Or sorry, at tackle, excuse me. He moved to tackle there, and he was an all-playmaker guy. Ty Barwind, he made our top 5 senior list kind of late, but still made it as an interior offensive lineman. I think next season he'll be at Colgate, so he'll be there. And then you have Brett Kolajay, who was a standout left tackle as a freshman. He unfortunately will be going to IMG Academy in Florida, so that's another Highlands Ranch player that they poached over there. So those three guys were the big parts of this offensive line. Valor has always shown to regenerate magically, not magically, but have great linemen come up and take their places. So I'm not as concerned about this, but obviously when you lose talents like a Morley, Barwin, and Kolajay, that's going to hurt regardless. So there could be some growing pains on the offensive line. Now, speaking a little bit more about the defense here, because that's what I want to do. They're losing some key guys, including Brody Bleak, who made our top 5 seniors list. at defensive tackle. And he'll be taking his talents to Northern Colorado, so really excited to watch him on Saturdays here soon. But he had 49 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks. They also lose Trey Stott at safety. He was another top 5 senior list guy. He collected 75 tackles, 3 picks, also had 414 rushing yards and 12 rushing touchdowns, coming up huge in the playoffs especially as well. Latter half of the season in general, I think he really turns up on offense as well as defense. He'll be going to San Diego. Then you have Roman Bradley, just missed our top 5 senior list as a middle linebacker, but he will be going to Air Force, and he was a huge part of this defense, racking up 107 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, also rushed for 477 yards and 6 touchdowns. He is a great athlete over there, and so he's going to definitely be missed. And then they also lose Rowdy Beers. They're 6'5", 222-pound defensive end. He had 18 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 5.5 sacks. I believe he will also be playing football on the next level. I just don't have it right in front of me. So there you go. So losing some key guys. Those are just the few ones that I want to talk about. Altogether, they are losing 10 of their top 13 tacklers, so there will be a lot of new faces on this team here. But it is Valor. They do a good job developing over there. I think they'll probably be fine, but enough about that. Let's talk about the players they do have here, starting with their star quarterback. He will be a senior this year, and I believe he's a 3-star with multiple D1s. Portland State was one that I saw earlier, but I know there's more. And that's Asher Weiner. Did not start initially, but heated up as the season went on, as he passed for 1,175 yards, 10 touchdowns to 7 picks, while rushing for 661 yards and 7 touchdowns. I think he would take a step forward, as he will be the full-time starter here, and I would imagine Valor passes the ball maybe a little bit more here, but still expect him to run the ball and hand it off a ton. This is definitely a guy that I know can pass and has made some pretty solid passes, and I think that could be the key moving forward. And even now that they're in the second year of Brett McGatlin, obviously they're always going to want to run the ball there, but there are going to be some opportunities to pass, and he'll be at the head of that. So there you go. Also, he's somebody in consideration for a top 5 senior quarterbacks list. We'll just have to see how this season goes. Now, another key player for them is going to be Alexander, aka Alex Jordan. He had 68 tackles at defensive end, 7.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks last season. He also plays tight end as well. He's a big body player, around that 6'5", I want to say 230-ish range there. He might get a bigger role on offense, so we'll just have to see about that. But on defense, I think he's... I don't want to get too controversial here, but I do think he is arguably the best pass rusher in the entire state, the best edge rusher. I really liked his film from last season. He would send me clips every now and then, and I mean, just the way he plays with speed and strength, it's special. I think he's definitely a next level guy, and he will be huge for this Valor defense. So they're returning a stud in Alex Jordan there. So there you go. Now, coming back to the offense, let's stay on the defensive side. There's one more player on defense I want to talk about, and that is Chase Zimmerman. The incoming senior is an athletic linebacker who I believe will be a big-time contributor, and I also think he's a next-level player as well. He just flies to the ball well, and he covers really well, too. Only had 27 tackles last year, but obviously, with the guys graduating in front of him, he should get more opportunities, so... there you go there. Look at those two guys to really turn up for the defense here, who, will need some time to gel, admittedly. But on offense, they got a lot of dudes here, starting with their 3-star running back, Gabe Sawchuk. He had an alright season. He was the lead rusher, rushing for 762 yards and 7 touchdowns here. He needs to have a big senior year, moving forward, to gain more offers, obviously, and also to deliver Valor a state championship, and I believe he can do that. His brother was a little bit bigger at this point in his career and a little bit more successful, so, for Gabe, would really like to see him break out here and be that bell cow and turn up for Valor. He should have a solid offense, though be inexperienced, But, I think he should definitely be somebody that, could be due for a big senior year and could potentially be an MVP All-Pro guy depending on how the season goes. Speaking of offensive weapons, though, they bring back Jake Kreckler here, who did it all for Valor, really, this last season. He was their third leading rusher. He had 514 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, while also being their lead receiver at 29 receptions, 397 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns there. And also on defense, he had 27 tackles, so he will be added there. On offense, though, I think he's going to be a glue guy. Definitely part of the stable of backs that I know McGatlin likes to keep fresh over there. And so look for him to potentially get the ball a couple more times here. I think he's a next level player as well with just everything he does. And so he's going to be a key part to this Valor squad. Probably the glue guy, I would say, for this Valor squad, or at least it feels that way at times. So there you go there. And then before I move on, there's one more player I want to talk about, and that is Cash Spence. As a freshman, he had snaps at receiver, and he caught for 19 receptions, 206 yards, and 1 touchdown. But the majority of that includes a valiant 6-reception, 85-yard, 1 touchdown game against Cherry Creek in state. And so if Valor passes the ball more, look for him to get more involved here and get in the mix, as he will only be a sophomore. And so that's going to be huge for Valor Christian to have all of these weapons, as they are very versatile. But you still could probably expect them to pound the football. But, I wouldn't be surprised if they threw in a couple more pass plays, some shorter RPO types to get guys like Kreckler and Spence out there in space and going, and maybe even get Alex Jordan a pass or two here as well. So this is going to be a very interesting offense here. They could beat you in a number of different ways and control the pace of the game, which I think will be the key to winning. As this defense will need some time to gel and learn and all that great stuff. But I think going into this year, this is another prime year for Valor to win state here. But let's just go to their schedule and talk about it here. They play Regis Jesuit. That's on Saturday. I will potentially look to go to that game because it is at 7 p.m. So that should be a fun one at Regis. I think that's a dub, though. Regis, they're losing a lot. This is a very early game for Regis, so I don't know how good this team's going to be. I think if they played them a little bit later, it would be a more dangerous game. But I think right here, Valor gets a good dub here. Following that, they play Pine Creek. I believe I will be here or be at this game, since it will be in the Springs. So I think I'll for sure be at this one. I believe that is going to be a win for Valor here. This is going to be a tough squad. This is going to be a tough test, and it's going to be a good one to see where both teams are at. But I like Valor a little bit more here to, potentially come back and win a game or hold a lead. We'll just have to see moving forward, but I'm going to give it to them. That one could definitely go either way, though. Then Fairview, I think that's a win there. Then following that, they go away here to play Rayburn Gap Nakuchi, I believe, over in Georgia, which is an interesting team because they are in Georgia, but they play teams mostly in North Carolina. That will be a good squad as they return a young quarterback who did not make a lot of mistakes here. So I'm looking at this Valor defense, Alex Jordan and company, to go ahead and rattle him. And then on offense, you got to score here, control the pace of the game, play physical football over there. And so that's going to be a great test, honestly. I really like that matchup for Valor. Following that, they come back home here, but they go away once more. They have a 3-game, or I think 4-game streak where they're just playing away, starting with that one out of state. But when they come back, they play Ralston Valley away in Ralston. I still think that's a dub. Ralston loses some key pieces on defense, while Valor, they will be as well. But I think by this point, those pieces should be fitting in nicely. Will be a close win, but I'm going to give them the dub here. Castleview, that's another one that's away. That should be a win. Highlands Ranch, that'll be away. I mean, still closer, though. That should be a win. Then they finally come back home here. And, geez, man. So they don't... Actually, now that I'm looking at this, they only play home once in September. And then for the other 4 games, they're gone. So that's interesting. But they eventually come back home on Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th at home against Rock Canyon. That should really be a win there. Thunderidge at home, that should be a win. Mountain Vista, that one's going to be at home, which I think is going to help them out a lot here relatively, but this could be a trap game. I don't know if they really need to win this game at this point in the season, but I'm going to give it to them regardless. So I'll give them the win there against Mountain Vista. That's going to be a tough game against one of the top defenses in the state. Their secondary will be tested, and so honestly, this is kind of a good game to be playing at the end here because your defense would have played a lot of games by this point. They'll be as experienced as they possibly could be, at least in the regular season. So right now, I got Valor Christian going 10-0 with a window of wins between 8 and 10. Look, they're a contender, and I believe in McGatlin and the vision he has for this team. It may not be pretty like fancy passing football, but this is a team that will scrap to the last minute. They can win state. If there was any team to do it, I believe this is the one here. If they win state this year, this will officially usher in a new era of Valor dominance since it will be a state championship here. And you know, powerhouses, they mark eras in championships, right? And so I think this could be the year for Valor. Just looking over at Cherry Creek with all their losing, obviously they're going to have guys that'll step up and whatnot. And then looking around the state as well, you know, you have some other teams. So it's going to be relatively an even playing field across the state here. My biggest concerns for Valor, first off, is probably the defense. Defensively, a lot of inexperience. You know, that doesn't mean they don't have talent, but you have some inexperience here, and they're going to play some top offenses here. Pine Creek, Mountain Vista, Ralston Valley. Those are the top offenses in 5A in this state. Plus, they're playing that team in Georgia as well, you know. Oh, Regis Jesuit as well, but maybe not at the beginning of this season. Regardless, though, you know, I need to see where this defense is at here and how much they could learn and progress in season, really. And then on offense, there are concerns on the offensive line. I believe they'll figure it out, but there might be some communication concerns, so hopefully they get all of that figured out moving forward, as this isn't exactly the easiest offense to block for either. So we'll just have to see what happens, but you got to trust the Valor coaching staff to have that handled. And so with all that being said, I believe Valor will be a contender in 5A and can win state this year. There you go there. So that is their season preview. Thank you for rocking with us here on the Playmakers Corner podcast. That will do for this episode here. I know it was a little bit longer here, but you know, a lot of great teams to talk about, a lot to talk about here. So was happy to do it. And, you know, really looking forward to this season. I'm really excited to watch these teams play, not just these teams, but the other ones that we've done season previews for. And so if you want to check those out, go ahead and follow us on social media at Playmakers Corner on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube as well. We be posting a lot of content on there, including watch lists and interviews coming up as well. So make sure you check all of those out. And we will also be posting and tweeting stuff on Twitter. That's just at Playmaker Corner, so make sure you follow us and show some love there. But until next time, I'm your host, Simon Villanoz, and I will catch you later.